After my husband's ex-wife falsely claimed our 2-year-old son wasn't his, he abandoned us without hesitation. So I proved the truth with the DNA test and made everyone who doubted me regret it. My husband, Jake, and we'd been together for 5 amazing years, married for 3, and we have this incredible 2-year-old son, Oliver. He is without a doubt the absolute light of my life. And I truly believed he was the light of Jake's life too. Until last week. That's when everything just crumbled in the most devastating way imaginable. Let me take you back a bit because this whole situation is so unbelievably messed up. You need the full ugly picture to even grasp how we ended up here. Jake was married before to a woman named Melissa. They have a 6-year-old daughter, Emma, who Jake sees every other weekend and one night during the week. And Melissa? She has made my life an absolute living hell from the moment Jake and I started dating. She's one of those exes who just cannot stand that her former husband moved on, that he found happiness with someone else. For 5 long years, she's been on a relentless mission to sabotage our relationship in every single way possible. I'm talking about late-night calls to Jake with fake emergencies involving Emma, showing up at our house unannounced, claiming she needed to discuss something urgent about their daughter, and always making these snide, cutting comments about me whenever I was around during pickup and drop-off. I honestly tried to be understanding, you know? Co-parenting is complicated and I never, ever wanted to be that evil stepmother who caused problems between Jake and his little girl. But Melissa made it crystal clear from the very beginning. She saw me as a direct threat, and she would stop at nothing to get rid of me. When Jake and I got engaged, Melissa just cranked up her crazy behavior to 11. She started whispering things to Emma, telling her that I was trying to replace her mother, that her daddy didn't love her anymore, because he was starting a new family. My heart would just break when poor Emma would come to our house, confused and so upset, asking if her daddy still loved her, if I was going to make him forget about her. I would never ever try to come between Jake and his daughter. I went out of my way to make Emma feel welcome, to feel loved in our home. But Melissa just kept poisoning her against me, and Jake was constantly caught in the middle, desperately trying to reassure his daughter while dealing with his psycho ex-wife. And then things got even worse. I got pregnant with Oliver. Melissa completely lost her mind. She started spreading these disgusting rumors that I had trapped Jake with a pregnancy, that he didn't really want another child, that I was ruining Emma's life by taking her father's attention away from her. Throughout my entire pregnancy, Melissa would call Jake, crying about how devastated Emma was that she was getting a baby brother, how this was going to traumatize their daughter. Jake would come home so stressed, so worried, and I actually started to feel like I was doing something wrong by having his baby. Can you believe that? When Oliver was finally born, Jake seemed absolutely over the moon. He was such an amazing father right from the start. I actually thought maybe, just maybe, now that the baby was here, and Melissa could see how truly happy Jake was, she would finally back off. That she would accept that we were a family. But I was so wrong. If anything, Melissa got even worse after Oliver was born. She started making these insidious comments about how the baby didn't look like Jake. How it was suspicious that I had gotten pregnant so quickly after we started trying. She would say these things right in front of Emma, who would then innocently repeat them to Jake. I started noticing Jake looking at Oliver differently. He seemed distant, distracted. When I asked him about it, he'd just say he was tired from work, adjusting to a newborn. But I knew. I could feel it. Something was deeply bothering him. The breaking point, the moment my world truly shattered, came 2 weeks ago. Melissa asked Jake to meet her for coffee to discuss Emma's school schedule. Apparently, she spent the entire time planting seeds of doubt about Oliver's paternity. She told Jake she had always suspected I was cheating, and that he needed to get a DNA test before he wasted any more time raising another man's child. I found out about this conversation when Jake came home that night. He confronted me. He actually asked me if I had ever been unfaithful. I was so utterly shocked, so incredibly hurt, that he would even dare to ask me that question. I haven't so much as looked at another man since we've been together. I told Jake I was insulted, devastated, that he would question Oliver's paternity based on the word of his bitter ex-wife, a woman who had been trying to destroy our marriage for years. I reminded him that Oliver looks exactly like him, that he has all his mannerisms, his expressions. But Jake actually said that Melissa had pointed out things about Oliver's appearance that he hadn't noticed before, and that maybe we should just get a DNA test to put the matter to rest. I lost it. I absolutely lost it. Getting a DNA test would be admitting there was reason to doubt, and there wasn't. We had the biggest, most explosive fight of our entire marriage. I told Jake that if he truly believed I was capable of cheating on him, of lying about our son's father, then maybe he didn't know me at all. Maybe we shouldn't even be married. Jake got defensive, saying he didn't think I was cheating, but that Melissa had made some valid points, and a DNA test would prove Oliver was his, and then we could move forward without any doubts. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "If you need a DNA test to know that your son is your son, then you're not the man I thought I married." The fight went on for hours. Finally, Jake said he needed some time to think. He packed a bag just like that and went to stay at his friend's house. I was left alone with Oliver, staring at the empty space where my husband had been, wondering how my marriage had fallen apart so quickly, so completely. For the next week, Jake barely contacted me except to check on Oliver. And when he did come by to see the baby, he was cold, distant. He treated me like I was some kind of stranger. It was painfully clear. Melissa's poison had worked. She had successfully planted enough doubt in his mind to utterly destroy our family. Then last Friday, Jake called and said he wanted to come over to talk. I thought maybe, just maybe, he had finally come to his senses, that he realized how ridiculous this whole situation was. But instead, he told me he had been doing a lot of thinking, and he couldn't get past his doubts about Oliver's paternity. He said he thought we should separate until we could get a DNA test done. I was absolutely devastated. Jake was essentially telling me that he believed his manipulative ex-wife over his own wife, that he was willing to abandon his family based on her lies. I looked at him and I told him, "If you walk out that door, you shouldn't bother coming back." Jake said he was sorry, but he needed to know the truth, and that if Oliver was his son, then we could work things out. But until then, he couldn't pretend everything was normal. He packed more of his things and he left. I spent the entire weekend crying, just trying to figure out how this had happened, how Jake could throw away everything we had built together just because his ex-wife had gotten inside his head. I realized with a sickening lurch that Melissa had finally won. She had succeeded in destroying our marriage. But then something shifted inside me. I got angry, because I knew deep down in my soul that I had done nothing wrong, and I wasn't going to let Melissa destroy my family with her lies. So I decided to get the DNA test myself, to prove once and for all that Oliver was Jake's son, and to make everyone who had doubted me eat their words. I made an appointment at a lab and had Oliver tested. Jake agreed to provide a sample, and then we had to wait 2 agonizing weeks for the results. Those were the longest 2 weeks of my life. My entire future depended on what those results would say. During those 2 weeks, Jake's family started treating me differently. Apparently, he had told them about the paternity questions. Some of them seemed to think that where there's smoke, there's fire, and that maybe Melissa was right to be suspicious. Jake's mother, who had always been so sweet to me, suddenly became cold and formal. His sister made some snippy comment about how she always thought it was weird that I got pregnant so quickly. His father said something about hoping everything would work out for the best, which was basically code for hoping Oliver wasn't actually Jake's son. I felt so incredibly alone, so utterly betrayed. These people who had welcomed me into their family were now looking at me like I was some kind of cheater who had tricked their son into raising another man's child. The worst part? Jake was letting them treat me this way. Oliver was too young to understand what was happening, but I could tell he missed his daddy. He would look around for Jake, babbling dada. And it just broke my heart because Jake was missing out on precious time with his son, all because he chose to believe lies over the evidence of his own eyes. Finally, the day came. The results were ready. I picked them up from the lab with shaking hands. And when I opened that envelope, when I read that Jake was indeed Oliver's father with 99.99% certainty, I felt this overwhelming mixture of relief and pure, unadulterated rage. Because I had been right all along, and everyone who had doubted me had been so wrong. I immediately called Jake and told him the results were in, and he needed to come over right away. When he arrived, I handed him the papers without saying a single word. I just watched his face as he read them, as he saw the confirmation that Oliver was definitively his son. Jake's face went white, then red, and then he started crying, apologizing, saying he was sorry for doubting me, that he had made a terrible mistake, that he wanted to come home and be a family again. But I looked at this man who had abandoned his wife and child based on the word of his bitter ex-wife. And in that moment I realized something chilling. I didn't know who he was anymore. I told him that proving Oliver was his son didn't undo the damage he had caused by choosing to believe Melissa over me. I told Jake that he had shown me exactly who he was when things got difficult. That he had proven his loyalty was not to his wife and son, but to keeping peace with his ex-wife. I told him simply, "I can't trust you anymore." Jake begged me to forgive him, saying Melissa had been very convincing, that she had pointed out things about Oliver that had made him doubt. I told him that was exactly the problem, because a real father doesn't need someone else to convince him that his child isn't his. I told Jake that he had missed 2 weeks of his son's life because he chose to believe lies, and those were 2 weeks he could never get back. Oliver deserved a father who would never doubt him, who would never abandon him, no matter what anyone else said. Jake kept apologizing, promising he would never doubt me again, that he had learned his lesson. But I told him that some mistakes can't be undone. And walking out on your family because your ex-wife plants seeds of doubt? That's one of those mistakes. I made copies of the DNA test results, and I sent them to everyone who had doubted me, including Jake's family. I included a letter, explaining that while the test proved Oliver was Jake's son, it also proved that they had all been willing to believe the worst about me without any evidence. I told Jake's mother that her cold treatment of me during those 2 weeks had shown me her true character, and that I would remember how quickly she turned on me when things got difficult. I sent a copy to Jake's sister, along with a pointed reminder of her comment about how suspicious it was that I had gotten pregnant quickly. I told her that her willingness to believe I was a cheater, based on nothing but Melissa's lies, had damaged our relationship permanently. I also made absolutely sure that everyone in Jake's family and friend circle knew exactly what Melissa had done, and how she had manipulated Jake into abandoning his family. I wanted them all to see what kind of person she really was. The response was immediate and dramatic. Suddenly, everyone was apologizing, saying they had never really doubted me, that they had just been concerned and wanted to support Jake through a difficult time. But I wasn't buying their backtracking. Not for a second. They had shown their true colors when they thought I might be guilty, and you can't unring that bell. Jake has been begging me to let him come home, promising he will never let Melissa manipulate him again, that he will cut contact with her except for matters directly related to Emma. But I told him it was too late for promises. I filed for divorce 2 days ago, because I realized I simply cannot be married to someone who would abandon his family based on the lies of a bitter ex-wife. Someone who would put his child through the trauma of losing his father, because he was too weak to stand up to manipulation. Jake is devastated. His family is begging me to reconsider, saying everyone makes mistakes, and that Jake has learned his lesson. But I keep thinking about those 2 weeks when I was alone with Oliver, wondering if my husband would ever come home. And I know I can't live with that kind of uncertainty. The irony of it all is that Melissa got exactly what she wanted. Even though the DNA test proved she was lying, she still succeeded in destroying my marriage and breaking up Jake's new family. But I've decided I'm not going to let her win completely. I'm going to make sure that everyone knows exactly what she did, and how her lies destroyed an innocent family. I'm going to make sure that Jake's future relationships know what kind of person his ex-wife truly is. I've also decided to pursue full custody of Oliver, because Jake proved that he's not capable of protecting his son from Melissa's manipulation. And I don't want Oliver to grow up thinking that his father's love is conditional on what other people say about him. The hardest part? I still love Jake. And I know he loves Oliver and me. But love isn't enough when someone shows you they'll abandon you the moment things get difficult. I can't risk Oliver going through this again when Melissa decides to create more drama. Jake keeps saying that he was confused and manipulated, that he's sorry. But sorry doesn't fix the damage that was done. It doesn't change the fact that when he had to choose between believing his wife or his manipulative ex-wife, he chose the ex-wife. I know some people think I'm being too harsh, that I should give Jake another chance. But I keep thinking about how easily he walked away from us, how he was prepared to let Oliver grow up without a father because Melissa planted some doubts in his head. A real partner doesn't abandon ship the moment someone starts spreading lies. And a real father doesn't need a DNA test to know that his child is his child. Jake failed both tests spectacularly. So now I'm a single mother starting over. But at least I know that Oliver and I are better off without someone who could be so easily manipulated into betraying his own family. I'm going to make sure that everyone knows exactly why our marriage ended, and whose lies caused it all. The DNA test proved that Oliver is Jake's son, but it also proved that Jake is not the man I thought I married. Sometimes the truth hurts more than the lies ever could have. Okay, so I posted that story a few weeks ago, about how Jake abandoned me and Oliver after his ex-wife Melissa convinced him Oliver wasn't his, and how even after the DNA test proved she was lying, I still filed for divorce because I just couldn't forgive him for believing her over me. Well, you guys, things have gotten even more complicated since then, and I'm honestly not sure whether to laugh or cry at how this whole situation has continued to spiral completely out of control. So, after I filed for divorce and made it crystal clear that I wasn't taking Jake back, no matter how much he apologized, Melissa apparently realized that her plan had backfired spectacularly. Instead of getting Jake back, she had actually destroyed his new family and pushed him further away from her. Jake has been completely devastated since I kicked him out. According to his friends, he's been an absolute mess, barely functional, and he's been telling everyone who will listen that he made the biggest mistake of his life, and that he would do anything to get Oliver and me back. But here's where it gets really truly twisted. Instead of being happy that she had successfully destroyed our marriage, Melissa started getting worried that Jake's depression and regret would eventually lead him back to me. So she decided she needed to do even more damage control. 2 weeks ago, Jake's friend Tom called me. He said he needed to tell me something important about what had been happening behind the scenes. And what he told me, it made my blood run cold. Apparently, Melissa had been planning this paternity scam for months. It wasn't some spontaneous idea that just came to her during that coffee meeting with Jake like I originally thought. Tom said that Melissa had been asking questions about Oliver's birth date, doing calculations about when he would have been conceived. She had even driven by our house several times to try to get pictures of Oliver to analyze his appearance. She had also been reaching out to Jake's family members individually to plant seeds of doubt about whether Oliver looked like Jake. She had been so careful to make it seem like she was just making innocent observations, rather than deliberately undermining our marriage. The most disturbing part? Melissa had apparently been researching how to convince someone to get a DNA test. She had found articles about signs of infidelity, and how to spot when a child might not belong to their supposed father, and she had used that information to meticulously manipulate Jake. Tom said he had known about some of this at the time, but he hadn't realized how calculated and deliberate it was until after everything fell apart. He felt so guilty for not warning Jake that he was being manipulated. I thanked Tom for telling me the truth, but honestly it just made me angrier, because it confirmed that Jake had been the victim of a months-long psychological manipulation campaign. And he had still chosen to believe Melissa over me. But then Tom told me something else that changed everything. It explained why Melissa was so desperate to break up our marriage. According to Tom, Melissa had been telling people that she was hoping Jake would leave me and come back to her. She had never gotten over their divorce and had been trying to win him back ever since. She had apparently been under the delusion that Jake only married me because he was rebounding from their divorce, and that deep down, he still loved her and wanted their family back together. Tom said that Melissa had been planning to swoop in and comfort Jake after our marriage fell apart, and convince him that they should give their relationship another try for Emma's sake. But instead of running to Melissa for comfort, Jake had been spending all his time trying to win me back, begging me to forgive him. It was becoming painfully clear to Melissa that her plan had completely, utterly backfired. So last week, Melissa made her most desperate move yet. She showed up at Jake's apartment, and she confessed. She admitted that she had lied about suspecting Oliver wasn't his child, and that she had made the whole thing up because she was jealous and wanted him back. Jake called me immediately after this conversation, and he was absolutely furious. He said that Melissa had admitted to deliberately sabotaging our marriage with lies, and that she had been planning it for months. He said that Melissa had actually broken down crying and begged him to forgive her. She said that she had realized she was still in love with him, and couldn't stand watching him be happy with someone else. Jake told her that she had destroyed his family and his marriage, and that he would never forgive her for what she had done. He said he was going to make sure everyone knew what kind of person she really was. He also told her that he was going to pursue full custody of Emma, because he couldn't trust Melissa to put their daughter's well-being above her own selfish desires. He said he was going to tell Emma the truth about why her daddy and stepmom had separated. Melissa apparently completely lost it when Jake said this, and started screaming that she had only done it because she loved him, and that I had stolen him away from his real family, and that she deserved another chance. Jake recorded part of this conversation on his phone, and he sent it to me. Listening to Melissa admit that she had deliberately lied to break up our marriage was both vindicating and heartbreaking. On one hand, I felt so vindicated because it proved that I had been right all along, and that Melissa was exactly the manipulative psycho I had always known she was. But on the other hand, it was heartbreaking, because it meant that my marriage had been destroyed by someone who was just jealous and selfish, and couldn't stand to see Jake happy with someone else. Jake has been begging me to listen to the recording, to consider giving him another chance now that we know the full truth about what Melissa did and how she manipulated him. He's been saying that he was the victim of psychological manipulation, and that he should have trusted me, but that he was being bombarded with lies and fake evidence, and that anyone would have been confused in his situation. Part of me feels bad for Jake, because I can see now that Melissa's campaign against our marriage was much more sophisticated and deliberate than I originally realized, and that she really did put him in an impossible position. But the other part of me is still so incredibly angry, because regardless of how convincing Melissa was, Jake still chose to believe her over me, and he still walked out on his family when things got difficult. I told Jake that knowing the full truth about Melissa's manipulation didn't change the fact that he had abandoned Oliver and me, and that trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. I also told him that while I appreciated him finally standing up to Melissa and threatening to pursue custody of Emma, It was too little, too late. And that he should have protected our family from her from the very beginning. Jake has been sending me flowers and letters, and even showed up at my work to beg me to give him another chance. But I told him that I needed time. Time to process everything and figure out what was truly best for Oliver and me. The truth is, I'm more confused now than I was before. Because part of me wants to believe that Jake was just a victim of Melissa's manipulation, and that he deserves another chance. But another part of me thinks that a good husband and father should have been able to see through Melissa's lies, and should have trusted his wife enough to not abandon his family based on the word of a bitter ex. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I do know that Melissa's confession has changed the dynamics of everything. I'm going to have to decide whether Jake's betrayal was forgivable given the circumstances, or whether some lines once crossed can never be uncrossed. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to give everyone closure on this crazy situation, because so many of you have been following this story and asking for updates. After Melissa confessed to Jake that she had made up the whole paternity scandal to try and win him back, I spent weeks going back and forth about whether to give him another chance. I talked to therapists and friends and family and basically anyone who would listen. The turning point came when I realized that while Jake may have been manipulated by Melissa, he still made the choice to abandon his family. That choice revealed something fundamental about his character that I just couldn't ignore. I kept thinking about those 2 weeks when Oliver and I were alone, while Jake stayed at his friend's house. How scared and confused I had been. How Oliver kept looking around for his daddy. I realized that I could never, ever put my son through that kind of uncertainty again. So I went through with the divorce, and it was finalized 3 months ago. Jake has been absolutely devastated, but I truly believe it was the right decision for Oliver and me. The custody arrangement has been interesting. Jake has been fighting for more time with Oliver, trying to prove that he's changed, and that he'll never let Melissa manipulate him again. And Jake did follow through on his threat to pursue full custody of Emma. The court battle with Melissa has been absolutely brutal, and it has exposed just how unstable and manipulative she really is. During the custody hearings, Melissa's true character came out in full force. The judge heard recordings of her admitting to lying about Oliver's paternity, and saw evidence of her years-long campaign to sabotage Jake's relationships. The judge was, to say the least, not impressed with Melissa's behavior. Jake was granted primary custody of Emma, with Melissa getting supervised visitation only. She has to attend therapy and parenting classes before she can have unsupervised time with her daughter. Emma has been living with Jake most of the time now, and she's actually been doing so much better without her mother's constant manipulation and poisoning her against me and Oliver. Jake and I have actually developed a decent co-parenting relationship. He's been an amazing father to Oliver, and has really stepped up to prove that he's learned from his mistakes. He's also been completely no contact with Melissa, except for communications through lawyers about Emma. He's made it crystal clear that he will never allow her to interfere in his life again. As for me, I've been focusing on building a new life for Oliver and myself, and I've actually started dating someone new who treats me with the respect and trust that I deserve. His name is David, and he's a divorced father with a daughter of his own. He's shown me what it looks like when someone chooses to trust and support their partner instead of believing lies and abandoning ship when things get difficult. David knows the whole story about what happened with Jake and Melissa, and he's never once made me feel like I need to prove my loyalty or faithfulness. That's been incredibly healing after everything I went through. Jake has met David a few times during Oliver's pickup and drop-off, and while it's awkward, I can tell that Jake realizes what he lost. And that David is everything Jake should have been but wasn't. I'm not going to lie and say that I don't sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had given Jake another chance. But I know in my heart that I made the right decision, because Oliver deserves a stable home with people who will never doubt or abandon him. The most satisfying part of this whole ordeal has been watching Melissa face the consequences of her actions. Not only did she lose primary custody of Emma, but she also became a social pariah when word got out about what she had done. Jake made sure that everyone in their social circle knew exactly how Melissa had deliberately sabotaged our marriage with lies, and how she had put Emma in the middle of her sick games. Melissa's own family was horrified when they found out the truth, and several of her relatives even reached out to apologize to me for not seeing through her manipulation sooner. She ended up having to move to a different town because she just couldn't handle the judgment and shame of everyone knowing what kind of person she really was. Jake tells me that she's been trying to contact him to apologize and beg for another chance, but he's blocked her on everything and refuses to engage with her manipulation anymore. Emma is in therapy to deal with the damage that Melissa's behavior caused, and she's been doing much better. She's even started asking about Oliver and wanting to spend time with him. I've been allowing supervised visits between Emma and Oliver because they are siblings, And Emma isn't responsible for her mother's actions. It's been healing to see Emma laugh and play without the weight of her mother's bitterness and manipulation dragging her down. As for Oliver, he's thriving. He is such a happy, confident little boy who is surrounded by people who love him unconditionally and will never make him doubt his worth. He has a father who sees him regularly and loves him deeply, and a stepfather figure in David who treats him like his own son, and a big sister in Emma who adores him. Sometimes I look at my life now, and I'm just amazed at how much better everything turned out than I could have imagined when I was going through the worst of it. I learned that sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up being blessings in disguise, because they force us to see people's true characters and make difficult decisions that ultimately lead us to better lives. Jake destroying our marriage by believing Melissa's lies was devastating at the time, but it also freed me to find someone who would never doubt me or abandon me when things got difficult. And Oliver gets to grow up seeing what healthy relationships look like, instead of watching his parents navigate the toxic manipulation that Melissa brought into our lives. So while this whole experience was painful and traumatic, it also taught me that I'm stronger than I thought, and that I deserve better than someone who would throw away his family based on lies. I hope this gives everyone closure on this crazy story and shows that sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well and building a better life without the people who try to destroy you.